Okay, well, let's see what we got here. Let's first start off by talking about Zoom etiquette and kind of your settings. And again, what I'm not here to do is say, hey, this is what's wrong with your environment. What I want you to know is how should the speaker's environment be so you can help them out. And the first thing I want to talk about is this thing called, well, let's call it headroom. And headroom is the distance between the top of your head. Gosh, I got a bald spot. What's going on there? All right. It's the top of your head and the top of the video camera. So Rich, give me some big headroom. That's a lot of headroom that Rich has got right there, right? The amount of headroom that you have, this is defined in video production as the most uninteresting space in video. And if you watch any news show, like whether it's Fox News, CNN, it doesn't matter which news show, every one of them is focused on eliminating headroom. So I'd like everybody to see if they can eliminate headroom right now. Now, it's okay if you cut a little bit of your head off. That's not a problem. What you definitely don't want is what Rich was showing you. You don't want the typical thing like this. Now, I have to admit, based upon what I would say is just common sense, most of us think that you want your eyes to be right in the middle of the screen because that's the center of the screen. Put my eyes right in the center. And that's not the way our brain works. Our brain will always focus on the top third of whatever we're looking at. If you look at a newspaper, their headline is at the top third. If you look at resumes, there's the objective is the top third. Marketing knows this one. And so in video, not only am I working on headroom, I want my eyes to be so that they're in, if I divided this frame into thirds, this is like 1/3 here, 2/3 here, my eyes should be in that top third. So those are the kind of two things that you're thinking of when it comes to video. And so now I think I look okay. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, it looks good.
All right. Everybody is perfect. You all are right on target. Other things that you're going to want to notice. Can anybody read what I've got on the back of my board behind me? No. Okay. Well, what it says is, what are you looking at? And you might have wondered, what does that say? And so you always want to think about your background from the standpoint of what is an audience member thinking of. So as much as you could, don't give them anything to look at because they're going to be interested. Like Vicky, I was interested in that. I think it's a painting that you have behind you. So I really wanted to see it. And that distracts from a presenter's presentation. It's like sometimes books are nice, but I guarantee you every time someone's got books in their background, people are looking like, oh, are they, what is their political leaning? What kind of books do they have? Or, what is their interests? So that's always good to kind of prevent that one from them seeing that.
Like with the news.
Yeah. Now, what you can also notice is there is no possibility for somebody walking behind me. I have a wall behind me. Most people don't have their home set up that way. Most people have their desks so they can have the best amount of room facing a wall. And what's behind them is the living room or the kitchen or whatever else it is, right? And that means every time somebody walks behind them, guess what the audience is looking at? Looking at the people in the background, right? They're not paying attention to the person speaking anymore. I'm lucky. I've got an environment. I'm here in my office today. I can block that out. Rich isn't lucky. He doesn't have the ability to block anybody out. And unless you thought Rich is living in some fancy loft in San Francisco, what you're really seeing is a virtual background.
Right.
So if you don't know how to use that one, check it out. There's a lot of videos online, but that's a way to be able to obscure your background to prevent the audience from seeing that one. And let's see, I got a couple of other hints and tricks. Look at that, Michelle, you got a nice virtual background. Oh, you'll notice that my blinds are closed. And the reason why I do that is because when it's real natural light, Rich is fake natural light, but when it's real natural light will force our cameras to adjust their, I guess, their iris, their sensitivity to light. And what happens is the camera will then completely drown out a person's face and you get a really dark face. So the only way that you can solve that problem is you can put like a light in front of you, which I just did right here. This is I don't even know if I can show you it, but this is just a desk lamp. I put that in front of me. So that helps a little bit. But more importantly, the more that you can eliminate those strong light sources from behind you, the better your environment's going to be. All right. thumbs up if you think that you're good on hearing about video etiquette or if you have any questions.
So the one thing that we've noticed is if you're on an Apple, the background does not function very well, if at all.
That's right. Yeah, it has to do with which is totally counterintuitive because I would have thought Apples can process video better than anything, but it has to do with your processor and the way it's working with that background. If it doesn't work, don't use it because that becomes, you know, some people's faces will become see-through, like on their foreheads, and that's more distracting than the background. So, you know, and you can help your members of your organization determine that. You could say, hey, you know, Frank, good try, but don't use the virtual background. All right. So last thing I want to talk about on the etiquette side is your audio. Most of us, and I believe all of you, are using your computer as the speakers, as well as you're using some form of an audio microphone, right?
Right.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. In rare situations, you might find that the computer can get overwhelmed and an audio feedback will occur. You might have heard that sound. It's like, wow, 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 wow. Because of that, I don't want to trust it anymore. I always have an extra set of headphones with me. So I just use the headphones and I stick it in my ear, but I still talk through the computer's microphone. So that's just a little technique. It's a nice one to prevent that from happening. It's good for speakers to know that too. The other thing that I do, and maybe this is a personal preference, is if I put both of my headsets in here, I hear everybody talking so wonderfully. It's like listening to stereo, right? I hear everybody's voice, but you know what I can't hear? I can't hear my cat who's meowing because they want to be fed, but everybody else can hear the cat through the microphone. So sometimes I only put one earpiece in. And as a matter of fact, see on this earpiece that I'm using right now, it's only one earpiece, so I can hear my room from this ear, and I know what's going on. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Before we get into the meat of this meeting, I'm going to ask everybody to do a quick function check. You can use your mouse, or you can use Option A for Macs or Alt A for PCs. That would be for your audio. Option V or Victor, or video, I should say, for PCs and Macs. I mean, Macs is option. Everybody go ahead and mute yourself, and everybody make sure your microphone's muted. Hopefully you didn't hear what I said because I was muted, right?
Right.
And Blanca, I can see you're not muted. Could you make sure mute yourself? Okay. And now this is something that you would want to you'd say like, Blanca, virtual background not working for you. I can see through your face. It scares me. All right. Now, the next thing I want everybody to do, everybody unmute mute your microphone. I want to hear your voices just to make sure microphones are all working.
Check.
Yep. Check.
Okay. Turn the videos off, and I want to see everybody's video off. Beautiful. Okay. And let's get their videos back on. And our videos are back on now. Perfect. Okay, what you saw was some of us had pictures and some of us didn't. If you're a moderator for a meeting, I'd like you to think beforehand to eliminate your picture. What I personally do is I just Googled black square and downloaded a picture of a black square, and I use a black square for my picture. The reason is if you're a moderator, if you're helping somebody run the meeting, you do not want to take attention away from them. The other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to take attention away from them by even having a name. And I know that sounds silly, but move your cursor over to your picture. There's 3 dots. Click on those 3 dots. And I want everybody to rename themselves the word moderator with a capital M, M-O-D-E-R-A-T-O-R, space, and then the capital initial of your first name and a capital initial of your last name. And the reason why you want to have those initials is without those initials, people don't have any clue who it is when you turn that video off, okay? So that's what we try to do as a moderator, and any one of you might be in this role. When you're a co-host or a host, you can even change anybody else's name. It's not just yours. And the way that you do that is you click on the participants at the bottom link of your screen. You'll see everybody's names. Under more, you can choose rename. And there you go. All right. Rich, take the lead now. I want you to show some of the resources we have for Zoom, for our moderators, and even for just general users.
Sure. So we developed a work from home website around doing things on Zoom, especially around the board meeting presentations. So we developed a Zoom quick guide. To get to the Zoom quick guide, let me just start from the beginning. We all have access to the intranet of SECOE webpage. And then down here, the third link of what's new at SECOE, well, not so new anymore because we've been sheltering for 1.5 months, is this work from home information and resources that we developed. And you don't even have to log into the internet. You just click this link, it'll take you to a public page that's on our SharePoint website. And on this website, we actually have our Zoom quick guide, video working remote basics for SECOE, where Jim puts his Zoom diaries and some common questions around working from home. So what we're going to focus on today is the Zoom quick guide. And here we added some resources for getting started with Zoom. This is just creating an account if you don't have one yet. Audio and video presentation guidelines, which Jim went over at the beginning of this session. Setting up your professional setting again, which Jim went over. And then we're going to be actually talking about the different roles for hosting a webinar. And that's important so that you can have established roles. So there's a lot of different roles, but if you're very adept at using Zoom, you can multitask and handle a lot of these on your own.
All right. The first thing that you're seeing here is a matrix of this document. And we tried to identify how many people it would take to run a Zoom meeting. At the most efficient meeting, you only need one person to run the meeting, but that one person should not be any of the speakers. So you never want to try to juggle a meeting and speaking. We're specifically talking about webinars, right? And so webinars, and Blanca, you asked this question, what's the difference between a webinar? Webinar allows the public to join, and they would be joining as an attendee, and they're completely isolated from the panelists who are the people that are speaking. The isolation allows them to be able to watch, but they don't actually get to talk. They don't get to share their screen or their video, and that makes you more secure and creates that environment where nobody is Zoom bombing you. So when you have a webinar, I guess the real question that you have to ask yourself is, how big is this webinar? Am I going to have 100 people, 200 people? To me, anything over 20 people is big. So if I have over 20 people, I will usually identify 3 people on my team, 3 people that are not in speaking roles, to serve as in a role of the webinar. And the roles we have are the host, the audio monitor, video monitor, content sharer, chat moderator, participant support, public viewer monitor, and then if you need a translator, that would be a translator. We're not going to specifically talk about the act of translating because I don't speak any languages other than English and some really poor Spanish, but we will demonstrate it though. So hope that helps. All right, Rich.
Okay, so first role is the host, which is the person who's going to create the meeting. So their duty is basically getting the meeting created, sending out the link so that people have it, deciding on the broadcast medium with whether or not they're going to use the Zoom share to YouTube, or if they're going to use a different connection for how they want to broadcast a meeting. In the board meetings that we have at SECOE, we actually link it up to something that Lindsay has called Swagit that broadcasts to the public. But for the purpose of your meetings, we're discussing just using the Zoom feature to share to YouTube directly. And then we're going to get that set up. So once the host has the meeting set up, they'll be the ones who actually control the participants, whether or not they're going to be co-hosts or panelists, and they just monitor the list of participants to make sure that everyone has it. Okay.
The concept of broadcasting to YouTube is not needed. It's only needed if you're going to have an extraordinarily large audience and you don't want to invite them as an attendee to your Zoom meeting. That way you could just give them a YouTube link, they see the YouTube video, and it's good to go. If you're looking at maybe a 50-person audience, it's okay that they join as attendees. You don't even need to use YouTube. The audio monitor is going to be listening for rogue audio. And I always wear a headset. I've been the audio monitor for the board meetings, and I'm listening for kids crying, spouses yelling in the background, dogs barking, whatever it might be. And my fingers at the ready to mute them. And I'm also doing is I'm listening for in the board meetings, when the president calls on someone to speak, I'm going to check to make sure that they're unmuted. Now, I can't control their microphone, but when I click unmute, it definitely sends them a little message that says the host would like to unmute you. So that's what the audio monitor is doing.
Okay. And then the video monitor is someone who's looking at the feeds for anything that might be disruptive or the same kind of etiquette things. If you notice somebody's head is a little bit lower, you can probably mention that, or their video is off and they're speaking and they should have it on. You can actually prompt them to turn on their video. And then hiding unnecessary people who aren't in the speaking roles anymore and making sure that they're no longer sharing their cameras. And if you see anything inappropriate going on, you can quickly hide their videos as well.
Right. The content share. We sometimes think of Zoom as like this, oh my gosh, it's a new technology, but it is just a technology that takes old school things and puts it on the web. Every one of us has been to a meeting before, and most of the time there's a laptop that's available where all the PowerPoint slides are loaded on, and then that laptop is sharing the content, right? You could, if you had a meeting where you had 10 different presenters, you can allow them to unplug the projector from the one computer, plug their computer in, and then inevitably you see them fumbling around and they don't know what they're doing, and you're like, oh my goodness. And so most of us have said, you know what, just email the presentation to a single person at a normal meeting and they'll share that content. Think of it exactly the same way as on Zoom. You need to identify one person, and for the board meetings, it's Carmen, the administrative assistant. And what that person then does is they house all the presentations, they share that, and then the speaker usually will say next slide, and then they'll advance the slides. As tempting as it is to say, well, it's just as easy to let everybody else share their screens, inevitably what you'll have is somebody fumbling with their computer and not knowing what to do next. So that's why a content sharer is always a good role to have.
Mm-hmm. You don't want anyone to detract from the presentation by waiting for them to be able to figure out how to share their screen if you have one source to do it. Okay. So next, the chat moderator, if chat is enabled. For this session, we actually have it disabled because that's how we're mimicking the board meeting. But if there was chat, which is a great tool for if anyone has any questions or technical issues, they can type it in there. It's always good to have that monitored because you don't want anyone to Zoom bomb. And it's it's very easy to inappropriately do something in chat, and that's why we just automatically have it disabled by default for board meetings. The chat moderator is also someone that we just put in the role who can do that renaming of participants ahead of time so that we don't have people just go in and have to rename themselves and people just give themselves inappropriate names. You can have someone that has that role that just changes all the names for you.
We do that for the board members as well, because some board members, they use their email address, and so they might say fuzzy slippers, and we don't want them to be recognized as fuzzy slippers on a board meeting. So we'll name them trustee so-and-so. And that was just an example. I don't have any trustee that goes by fuzzy slippers this last board meeting. No, I'm joking at all, period. Next one is participant support, or I'm at chat moderator. You just did chat moderator.
Support, yeah.
So participant support is not that there's a lot of support needed for Zoom, but even the things like the video etiquette that we talked about the headroom, making sure that it's not too much, that your eyes, that's somebody that just at least knows the basics of it. And we like to publish somebody's email address. It could be, if it's extremely sensitive meeting, maybe a cell phone. Yi Wan had performed a webinar meeting with a congresswoman present and some city council members and some state assembly members. And so I definitely provided my cell phone so that they can call me or ask me if they had any questions. And so that's what a participant support would do.
And they'll be in roles for, again, people connected prior to the meeting start. So we actually have all the board members for our board meeting on speed dial, basically, so that they can make sure they're connected prior to the board meetings. The public viewer monitor is just someone who has access to the public broadcast if you're not just having people connect to Zoom, just to make sure that there's no issues where people can't see something or it's not being broadcast correctly. So the public viewer monitor just basically just checks to, if it's a YouTube link, they have that YouTube link and they have it open on the side to make sure everything looks good during the meeting and there's no issues to what the public sees.
And then the translator. I'm not going to go over the specific details of what they do. They translate. That's about it. Zoom does have a feature on translation. And before I leave this document and show you that feature, and Rich is going to help us, I wanted to go back up to the top and talk about, on the left-hand side, we have all those roles that we mentioned. But notice that person one could do both the audio monitor and the video monitor, as well as being the public viewer monitor. Person two could be the host, chat moderator, and participant, and maybe we only have one person being the content sharer. I said earlier that when you have small meetings, you can literally have one person perform all the roles as long as they're not a speaker, and it could be as easy as that. So really, it's up to you to be able to assess what is your meeting environment, how complicated is it, and then you can better identify how many people you need to help. All right.
If the person has a role, are they a co-host?
Yes. Yes. We make anybody that has a role should be a co-host. It gives them the ability to use the features. I want to show you a feature that, click on the word participants. And if you click on the word participants, it opens and shows you all the participants. At the bottom of that is these three little dots, right?
Mhm.
And you can see that, see if you can raise your hand. Click on that and try to raise your hand through that. And allow attendees. Do you all not see that raise your hand option?
I do.
All right. And if you can raise your hand, click on it. And I see that, yeah, one hand's raised.
I'm not sure if a co-host can actually raise hand.
I don't see
Yeah,
it.
you're right. I think you're right. I'd have to get rid of all of the peoples as co-hosts, and well, we're not gonna do that one right now. I did want you to know where you'd find it though. It's
That's good.
those
Okay.
three little dots will allow you to raise your hand if you're not a host. Now,
Oh.
I at first I got stuck by this one because I'm like, why aren't hosts allowed to raise the hand? And the answer is because you're the host, you don't have to raise your hand. You have complete control of everything. So co-hosts and hosts don't have the ability to raise their hand. It's a good little thing to know. It works in regular Zoom meetings. So if you're ever on a Zoom meeting, you can test that feature out. It's nice to let your audience know that in order to be addressed, you can raise your hand. These are the panelists. And what inevitably you'll see people doing is like this.
Yeah.
They're raising their hand. Well, that's not so good, right? By using the raise hand feature in Zoom, it will actually order their hand raising in the order that the first person raised their hand. This way, like oh, go ahead, Blanca.
Gonna say, so if you got two people that raise their hands, they'll do one. It'll keep it on there until the host says go ahead to that person.
And then the host would then lower the hand. Yes, the host could choose their option to lower the hand.
And they'll go to the three little dots to lower their hands.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we can use that on meetings. Absolutely.
Yeah, it works out really well.
And also one more question. So we would have to have this participant window open in order to see if the hands are raised, right? Because if it's not open, then even though the attendees are raising hand, we won't be able to see that. Is that correct?
That's right.
Correct.
Yes.
So always have your participants window open when you're moderating. That's just good practice. And also if you want to make sure you're looking at a gallery view at all times so that you see anything odd with any videos rather than just seeing the active speaker.
So Michelle, could you raise your hand again? So sometimes, I mean, everybody has to get comfortable with their environment, and people will become comfortable with different environments. Sometimes I'm really comfortable with video, especially like on board meetings. There's only 8 people. So I get a hold of that one. Do you guys notice that on Michelle's video, her hand is raised?
Yes.
So at least I can see that her hand is raised. I won't know what order she's in, but I can still recognize that one. So there's ways to do the same thing in different environments, but it's good to be comfortable with the different environments, like clicking that participant window and seeing what it looks like there. Looking at the
Oh, I don't see it
you
on
up
our
there.
video
I'll
that
see
hand
it.
is raised. I just see it on
I'll
the
see it on the video.
participant.
Oh, is
But
that
I
right?
don't-
Okay, so Michelle, don't do anything because I'm gonna now give everybody, the co-hosts, the ability to see that. Okay.
I see it.
Let's see.
A little-
Yeah, Blanca, you're a co-host, so let's go.
Mhm.
Give me a second here while I pull everybody up.
So panelists won't see a raised hand on video either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go, Phil. Michelle. Okay, so I've got 2 more to go.
Mhm.
And now everybody except for Michelle should be able to see that on the video, Michelle's hand's raised.
I still don't see it.
Lower and raise it again, and then you should see it now.
See a little, okay.
There you go.
And so
And I-
as moderators, that's what you would see.
But I don't see the order like we were talking about before.
Yeah, you're right. Only way to see that one is you have to click on participants. And if Rich, I'm gonna take away your code so you can raise your hand.
Yeah, so the video screens won't rearrange themselves based on the hands raised, but actually this won't work either because I'm the creator. I'm always gonna be at the top.
So what happens is the list on the right, that adjusts, right?
Yeah, that
Uh-huh.
will adjust based on your attendees and panelists. But
Okay.
Oh, who's next?
it won't move me or Jim, I believe, because we are the creators.
No, you got lucky on that one. So I'm actually
Okay.
looking at it. Michelle is above you,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
that's
'Cause
because
on me,
Michelle
I'm
raised
always
her
on the top.
hand.
I
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
And we wouldn't be in that role as moderators. What we're doing is making sure the meeting is going well. But for someone that's like maybe the director that's running the meeting, it could be the assistant superintendent, whoever might be running a meeting, they may say, okay, who's got our next question? And as a host, I might say, Michelle has had their hand raised the longest.
Okay.
And I can see that because they're on the top of the list.
Yeah. So President Rossi actually monitors the hand raising for the board meetings. And
Mhm.
And then
This is going to be great for us.
so which role manages this? Is it the host or
That's a good question. Did we not put that on the roles? I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. I already know.
Rich.
the
Uh,
hands.
Yeah, that would.
Oh, maybe
Who would
we
mo-
didn't identify that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I got to add that up on the list. But the key about what we wrote as far as who does the specific roles, that's just our perspective. I mean, you could say, hey, Joe, your hand monitor today. That's what I want you focused on. So we'll definitely add that to the list to make sure that that's.
Mhm.
When someone shares their screen, usually the gallery view goes away. Will you just have to scroll up and down, or is there a way that someone monitoring can get rid of the screen? They can just see the participants.
Okay, so that's a good question. As a co-host, in the bottom right corner of the participants window, you see the 3 dots.
Mhm.
If you click on that, it will show at the very last part of it, it will say what the attendees will see. And then there's 3 views, right? There's the, I'm not looking at it because I'm not a host, but the active speaker view, the host's view, or the gallery view.
Okay.
And based on that, that's what the participants or the attendees will be seeing at all times. So you actually control the camera for the viewers in this session. But the panelists, co-hosts, and hosts, they have the ability to see whatever they want as to who's on the screen. Okay.
Thank you.
And I just found out I can lower the hand raise for someone.
Yep.
If you're a
Yes, as a
co-host, I
co-host, you now have the hand control.
Rich, you ready to do
All right.
what are we doing? An interpretation.
Interpretation translation services.
Okay, so I'm going to explain how this interpretation is working because this is kind of interesting. I'm going to be assigned the role as an interpreter. The host of a meeting. You simply, could you kind of walk through what it is that you'll be doing that as you're going to be clicking one of the options and choosing?
Yeah, so once Jim turns on the interpretation feature, you'll have the ability to choose the interpretation channel that you want to listen to at the bottom of the screen. By choosing that channel, you're going to actually disconnect from the main chat audio. So the audio that you're hearing here would be considered the main room, and you'd be entering the audio for the interpreter. The interpreter would hear whatever is from in the main room and then interpret it out to what you guys would hear in that channel. So if Jim was interpreting in the Chinese room, for example, then you would hear his audio as the interpreter of the Chinese channel.
All right, so I've paused the video here to explain what's going on. Right now, I've moved into the Chinese channel as the interpreter. Now, I don't speak Chinese, but as you'll find out later on, being in the Chinese channel doesn't require you to have to know how to speak Chinese. And Nan is going to follow me in the Chinese channel, and I'm also going to bring you along with us. You'll notice that when we go to that channel, you won't be able to hear Rich anymore. Only me as the interpreter will be able to hear Rich. All right, let's see how this works. Okay, tell me when you're in the Chinese channel. Okay, and Nan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Nan can hear me. All right, so now what's happening, Nan, is Rich is telling a story, and it's it's kind of an embarrassing story because what he's saying is that when he was hired, when I was hired as an employee for SECOE, I actually changed his life. That he found inspiration in everything that I did, and that it's profound, and that he's now passed this gift on to other people. And let's see if there's anything else in the story. And he's so happy that he's going to be buying us all a beer at the next time he sees us at the local bar. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and turn off that interpretation service. We're all going to return back to the room with Rich and see how my interpretation went. Okay, all right. And so there you go, Nan. How did that translation go?
Very great story.
All
Very
right,
touching.
so
I'll be waiting for that beer.
Here, I was talking about my childhood.
What you experienced there was that Rich was communicating. And Nan, I'm betting that you heard him in the background just a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. And that's what a person would hear when they're in translation. They would still hear the person in the background. They have the ability to lower the volume of that. But then the translator would be translating what they're saying. Now, of course, I don't speak Chinese, but I was in the Chinese translation room. And that's because the translation labels, that Chinese, there was Spanish, those are all just labels. They don't really mean anything other than that's the word of a language. So somebody asked us how are they going to translate in Vietnamese? Because there is no Vietnamese label. And we recognize that Zoom just doesn't happen to have that label. It doesn't mean that they can't use Vietnamese. So what they'll be doing is they'll announce to the audience in Vietnamese, if you would like to hear a Vietnamese translation, it will be broadcast on the Russian channel. Does that make sense? And it just is a label. That's all it is.
It just depends on who's in that room
That's all
being
that
able to
matters.
translate. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, because I do need to be able to use the translation feature from
Okay.
time to time. So I was just wondering, again, the host will be able to set that up in the beginning of while he's setting up the Zoom meeting, and set that up, and then assign someone as the translator. Then when the translator has that role, they'll put the headpiece on, and nobody else will be able to hear them, or do you have to do something special for that?
So if I'm the translator and I'm the Spanish translator, I would be assigned to the Spanish channel. I'm doing it this way, right? So when an attendee goes to the Spanish channel, I'm the only microphone they can hear.
Okay.
Even though Rich would be talking away and blah, 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 they couldn't hear him. They could only hear me. So it's my role as the translator to repeat what I'm hearing in my ear in the language that they're on, which would be Spanish.
And how do you choose the channel? I guess that's what I'm trying to connect with that.
There would be a little pop-up for all of the attendees that show that they could choose their language.
Got it. Okay.
So it doesn't put them in a different room. They're actually within the presentation, but it's in their language.
Yeah, that's kind of why they use the word channel, is it puts them in an audio channel, not a
Okay.
different room.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
the video will be off, so nobody can see them, right?
Now that could be however each of them, like if I wanted to, I could leave my video on, but the problem is it would show everybody my video. As a translator, I wouldn't want that.
Right, that's what I think. So you turn the video off.
I would turn my video off. Yeah.
Okay. And then in the beginning, when you set up the Zoom and you set up the translator and you choose the language, you'll be able to assign a person to that there at that time?
Yep.
Yeah, so you want me to demo that. The reason the translator wasn't set up is because when I was cloning the meetings, it doesn't clone the translator. So But yeah, you set up the translator ahead of time. You have to have their email address because they have to be authenticated when they log into the Zoom session.
Oh, good to know that.
And
Okay.
then you choose what language they'll be interpreting into. And Zoom allows you to translate into 8 different languages right now. So you have to make sure you choose one of those languages, but you can always just say that we're going to be using this language in Zoom for the purpose of translating into this language. So, because one of the options it doesn't have is like Vietnamese, which would probably be something that we'd have in San Jose. So you could say, okay, we're going to be broadcasting the Vietnamese transmission in the Portuguese language channel or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That confused me royally because when I heard Zoom doesn't allow to translate in certain languages, I'm thinking, what do they do? Like, do they mask people that speak the wrong language? Or, and I think maybe a way that I was able to understand it is Zoom only provides labels for 8 different languages, but you can use any label for any language. You can say, we're using the label of Bulgarian, but we will be speaking Portuguese in that label.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be confusing, I know, but so it's not going to prevent you from using any other language. It just only provides 8 labels of languages.
Mm-hmm. So if you identify that prior to the meeting start or while attendees are joining and saying that that's where that language is going to be broadcast, they should get an idea. And once they're in that channel, they hear that language, then they'll definitely know at that point.
Yeah.
So I have a question. We've got all of these different possibilities being set up, but if, say, Richard has organized the meeting and we're now the ones that are running it, do we have to have Richard there to start the process, or because we're now a host? How does this work?
That's a good question. And we're going to establish that each division has at least one webinar account. So then you can work with all the administrators in a particular division, all the directors, whoever it is. Hey, I need to log in. I'm going to set up a meeting. And then you have full control of those configurations.
So any assigned co-host can actually start the meeting as well, not just the creator on the account.
We have a meeting, we have a webinar set up for next week.
Oh my gosh.
Richard set up the meeting, gave me the link. I sent out the invites. And so now I'm questioning, can I start the meeting, or do I have to have Richard there to start the meeting? Because you said this is a service account and it has, I don't know if it's already been set up. And so that's my question.
For the meeting that was set up on your behalf, you are already pre-assigned as a co-host, so you can start the meeting.
Awesome. That's what I needed to know.
There's going to be a transition where the meetings that Richard's already set up, he's going to have to deal with that and assign co-hosts. But then once these service accounts created, then you can all start doing that yourself.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it's not that we don't want to do it for you. We love doing it. Matter of fact, if that was my job, 100%, all I do is Zoom meetings, then I'd be like, this is the life. Unfortunately, that's not my job in the sense that my boss is telling me, when are you going to get your other work done? So I've got to be paying attention to that one. And I can't be instantly available for everybody's needs. And that could harm you if you needed to get something done.
Absolutely. And I agree with Jim because he's my boss and he's telling me I got to do other things than Zoom.
Okay.
Question.
You keep on hitting us with your questions and let us know if there's anything that we haven't addressed.
Okay. No, you actually touched on this, but I didn't get it all. And I know this is recorded. So that actually brings me up with 2 questions. But you have said that instead of using YouTube, when we have, let's say 20, our staff is 26, or we're having our board meeting, which is really 4 or 5 of us. Right now we did, Phil is hosting it because he has the YouTube and he has the account for Zoom and all that. And he says that, but you made a reference instead to use something else. And I didn't get all that.
Okay, I'll cover that one. Let's say I'm going to give some scenarios, and anybody unmute your microphones, jump in. You can answer this question however you want. Let's say you have a meeting of 15 people. And in this meeting, you want everybody to participate. You want people to chime in when they could chime in. You're not publishing this out there anywhere. It's all internal team meeting. Should you use, which should you use? Should you use Zoom or should you use webinar?
Zoom.
And Zoom, you're
Zoom.
absolutely right.
More
You do not
interactive.
need webinar for that. That's
Or
like,
Teams.
That's like a
or Teams is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So webinar is only for something that's large and more importantly for the public. Okay. So now let's say that you have a meeting and you got 200 people coming to this meeting, right? And you're going to post it on the public. You don't expect more than 200 people. What would you use, Zoom or would you use webinar?
Webinar.
You would use webinar. Now, when you're using webinar, do you have to broadcast to YouTube?
No.
No. And why? What else? How else could the participants see that webinar if you didn't broadcast to YouTube?
On Zoom.
That's right. You give them the webinar link and they would join it through Zoom. So now the next question is, why would you ever want to broadcast to YouTube? And you ready for this one? Because YouTube has this fancy little feature where you can actually embed the video into an existing website. And now you can just say, hey, we've got 5 million people going to be watching this because everybody wants to hear Jim talk about Zoom and co-starring Richard, and everybody's like, yeah. And then I could say, just go to sccoe.org and you will see a video start playing as soon as the meeting starts. That is why we would use YouTube.
But then the Zoom, having people join there, it lets them actually still actively participate by raising their hand without being able to Zoom bomb. So for those meetings like that Stronger Together reopening that you're having next week, people are just going to join by the Zoom link, and then when they're ready to participate, they raise their hand and they're allowed to talk at that point.
Yeah.
Right, because at the board meeting, we have our main people that are the committee, but then we have to let the public know of it and be able to take they can, put in, submit public, comments or questions.
Now, and before Zoom ever came along, the board meetings were broadcast through a system called Swagit. Well, we didn't have to tell the public, hey, we changed our minds, we're using a different system. So we still broadcast our meetings over that system.
And so this is now embedded to Zoom. We just do everything to Zoom.
I think for most of the things that we're all going to deal with, you don't have to worry about the YouTube broadcast. You don't have to worry about that Swagit broadcast. Zoom is enough.
So I have a question. When we set up the Zoom, we use the webinar link. When we publish our outward-facing document on our SCOE OYA page, homepage, that webinar link is what's the public, that's the public link to access our Zoom meeting. That makes sense now. Perfect.
And a panelist can use the exact same link, but when they log in with their email address, it'll recognize them, oh, you're a panelist, and promote them immediately. And now let's say, for example, a panelist doesn't remember that, right? As one of the moderators, I'm watching my attendees list to see if there's anybody I recognize. And I'm like, oh, there's a council member from the city of San Jose. I'm promoting them to panelist. Now, I could get in trouble because there could be a Zoom bomber that uses a fake name and then I accidentally promote the wrong person. But I would say, yeah, but Rich is monitoring the videos. And if he saw something funky going on, he'd disable that video right away and we'd be protected.
And prior to promoting them, always just check with them first, hit the allow to talk button, say, Council Member Chu, is that you? And then he'll say, yes, it's me. And then you can promote to panelists at that point, rather than doing it beforehand and having them share a video of their butt.
Council Member Chu, what's your second daughter's middle name?
Yeah, give them a CAPTCHA.
So I have another question. All right. How do I identify a panelist, and then how would I promote them?
Okay. Oh, see if can I drop you down as a
Me, no, but you can drop anyone else down.
That's okay. I'm gonna join this meeting on my phone, okay? And then every one of you that is a moderator will see me and you'll be able to see how to promote it. So this is a great technique, by the way. I've got Zoom loaded on my phone. What I have to do right now is I need to log out because I don't want it to recognize me as the person that's going to be moderating this. Okay, so now I'm signed out of my phone, and I'm just going to go ahead and join that weekly Zoom.
So you can use like a personal email address or anything else that's not a registered Zoom account for this meeting. just to see what the public sees, and then have a public facing.
So I'm joining the meeting,
Mhm.
and it's asking me for my email, and it picked up my personal email, which is fine. So I'm joining that meeting. It says connecting. And what if you click on, oops, let me disconnect my audio because we're gonna get, there we go. By the way, there's like a little 3 little dots right here.
I see a attendee, one attendee.
Yeah, and I have to disconnect my audio from my phone so it doesn't do it. So if you click on participants, everybody can click on the word attendees. There's a little thing that says more. If you click on more, you should be able to promote me.
Okay.
So you have allowed to talk, and then more gives promote.
Somebody just promoted me.
I did.
Oh, there you go.
Now he is a panelist. So as a panelist, he still can't do promotion, but he can do screen share and speaking. Once you're a co-host, then you have that ability to promote and lower hands and stuff.
Okay, and then pre-meeting, how do we identify, because you said if the individual's email is identified as a panelist, they would automatically be switched over to panelist. How would we identify them prior?
It's actually in the Zoom website platform, so you wouldn't be able to identify it in the actual application itself. You would have to go to the Zoom website when you're scheduling the meeting.
You want to share your screen?
Yep. So when you're actually creating the meeting here and you're scheduling it, so this is actually today's. I'll just go to today's. You have the ability to invite panelists here.
Got it.
And then just add any more so that see how everyone else is already pre-populated. So these are all panelists. Alternate hosts are when you're actually creating the meeting itself, and these are the ones who can start the meetings. Panelists are ones who would just join as a panelist, and they wouldn't be able to start the meeting. So
Okay.
the alternate hosts are created when you're actually doing the meeting creation, which is this screen here, and identifying alternate hosts here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. That was good. Okay.
So the
So
co-host.
another question.
Oh,
As part of the presentation for next week, we have polling questions that are going to be popping up.
Okay.
And I'm going to be the one who's going to be responsible for those polling questions. So we haven't touched on how to do polls in this meeting yet. So can you walk me through an idea of how to do polls?
So polling is the same thing. You're scheduling it in the website when you're creating the meeting.
Okay.
So again, this meeting is created. So let's go to your meeting for next week. This is the Stronger Together Recovery and Reopening Schools in Santa Clara County. Okay, so this meeting's already created, and to get to the polls, you're just going to go back to the bottom of this meeting creation and go to the polls tab. Okay, so this was actually generated off of the Stronger Together webinar we already had. So that's why these poll questions are already pre-populated.
Yes.
Okay, and then they were just created by clicking the add button, entering a title for the actual poll itself. So if this is poll question 1, you just do that. You can answer pregnant persons here, how are you? Then you can have whether or not they want to answer one question or multiple choice, and then it will just give you a percentage based on what they answer. So this will let you select any number of the choices from your answer choices below.
Okay.
Good, bad, okay. And once you hit save, then that whole question will be saved to that poll, and then you can launch it from the actual meeting itself.
Could you modify a poll ad hoc in real time?
We can. So let's add a poll question to the meeting that we're having right now.
Okay. And you would
Okay.
have to do it through this website, right?
You can either do it through this website, or if you're actually the host, you can do it directly on the screen. So let me do
Okay.
that. So I actually have a polls button, but it's not going to, I'll show you where it is. Yeah. So at the top of my screen, I have this polls button here. It will be at the bottom of your screen if you're not sharing a screen right now. So I click on that polls button at the top of my screen. It's going to ask me to add a question. And if I click that question, add a question button, so clicking that button and it's saying add a question. Let me show you that too. Okay, so I click that button and it has this add a question here. Okay, so I click that add a question button, and it's actually going to take me directly to the website again to add a poll.
I see. Man, you're real quick at this, Rich.
this is during the meeting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm doing this ad
Okay,
hoc
during.
meeting.
Okay, during the ad hoc meeting. Okay.
And what it turns out, and I was kind of wondering this, is in a sense, it just basically takes you back to that website. You'll have to log in as that in the service account we were talking about or whatever, if you wanted to add a question right then and there.
So I launched the poll, says poll in progress. You guys won't be able to answer because you're all co-hosts and hosts.
Okay.
Once the attendees answer this question, we'll be able to end the polling and share the results.
Oh, we just see the results. Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay.
Mhm.
And
So,
I'm assuming the question,
Rich?
only a co-host or a host can add a question or can pop that thing.
Only the actual host of the meeting can do the polling. So that's something that you have to worry about in that security setting, because the co-hosts don't have the co-host can launch. Only the host can ad hoc add polling questions.
Okay, so Michelle, you
So
should be
any of
able
you
to
can right now
hear-
click on the polls. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, we don't have that polls as a well, I might not be a co-host anymore.
Oh, you're not a
Oh,
co-host. Yeah. So let me make you a.
That's okay. You don't have to make me a co-host.
So any of you should see the polls at the bottom now because we have that poll question.
Right, I
And
see
then
it.
you can actually launch that poll or relaunch it or share the results.
Got it.
And I'm the only one that can answer.
You're the only one that can answer because you're the only panelist. Correct.
It's okay.
Panelist/attendee.
Love it.
Okay.
So in the meeting that we have scheduled for next week, you populated several questions. And in our meeting this morning, we made some technical adjustments to those questions for the meeting for next week.
Okay.
So do I need to send you the technical adjustments to the questions at this moment?
Sure. Until we get those service accounts set up, this poll and this meeting event is created by me, and I'm the only one who has access to changing those polls.
And so that was kind of where it was like, how do I make these adjustments and what do I need to do? And so, okay. So I will
I'll just do that for you. Yeah.
questions.
I'm going to give you all a little bit of a warning that I guarantee whoever your supervisor is will ignore. But I have to say this anyways. You've probably been to a presentation where a speaker's gone on stage and has done something extremely dynamic, something so dynamic that it like changed the mood of the room, right? Maybe they were up there juggling knives, right? And your boss comes to you and says, you know what? I want you to juggle knives at our next meeting because that was so dynamic. And you would say, no, I'm not going to do that because I can't do that. And they would accept it. What ends up happening is just because there's a technology that's available, for example, polls, some of the managers will say, we have a new technology, let's do it. Well, you either have to be really strong at saying, this is very risky, we've never done this before, don't do it. Or you got to learn how to juggle knives. Go get on Google, YouTube, question it, say, hey, how do you turn on polls and Zoom, and do whatever you could to figure it out, because you do not want to trust that technology is as simple as we sometimes put it.
Right.
Rich and I have tried to minimize everything that you're doing today. We don't want you to be to be scared about anything that you've done. When it starts getting a little bit more advanced, like for example, if someone said, how can I play background music? Oh my goodness, please don't make me, that's juggling knives for me, right? How could I have 3 people talking at the same time in unison so that I can make one of those videos that all of those other people are putting on YouTube that makes this wonderful music together? Don't do it, right? This is crazy stuff. That's the juggling knives. So just because you see something on technology or because technology might be there, you have to make the determination. Can I learn that? Is this within my capacity? Can I pull this off? I do think polling is within everybody's capacity. But it's also, I do think it's fair to say, yeah, you got to learn it. It's not something that's as easy as the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. Got it.
And don't tell your bosses I said that, because
Your secret is safe with me. I just need to make sure that I can do it. So
I hear you. Yep. And we're going to end up, had to close this meeting out because we're at the hour mark and it's lunchtime. I do want to leave you with this, that once you get that Zoom webinar account, that system account,
Service account.
practice, play with it,
Yes.
create a webinar, have your friends come on. It doesn't really matter who it is, or do a webinar with yourself and have a phone, join it with your phone just to see it.
I've
the more that
created
you're
countless webinars just to learn how to master it, just with myself joining on 3 different devices, my phone, a laptop, and other things, just to see how it interacts with each other.
yeah. His fiance told me it was quite embarrassing because he was talking to himself for days, but he knows how to use Zoom though, right? So I encourage you, enjoy the system, use it as much as you want. It costs us nothing to add more. Even if we did come into a cap where we're like, you're only allowed to do so many webinars, we'll buy more. This type of technology, while there is a cost to it, the benefit far outweighs the cost.
When do you think we'll get it, Jim? When we'll be ready to play with it?
Next week.
Yay. Okay.
Yeah.
Catherine, we'll have to go us 3 and Phil us 3 playing around with it. Okay. Got it.
Thank you all very much. If you do have any questions, both Rich and I are on Teams. We also are on email. And if you can find our phone number hidden somewhere in the building, you might be able to text us and do all that other stuff too.
Now, this is going to be on the intranet so we can listen to the recording. That's another thing I've kind of had.
I will load this one. Yes.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Thank
All
you.
right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So you want to get started? So
Yeah.
This is just the Zoom website. You have to log into the web portal to do any scheduling for webinars. Find my fire hydrants.
And it's just zoom.us is all you're doing, right? And then sign in.
Yeah, it's zoom.us.
So that
And then you'll
link,
have the user type.
and that identifies that you have now the ability to create a webinar. All right, so what we're gonna do here, Maria Isabel, is we're gonna actually schedule a webinar for practice session.
Okay, perfect.
All right, Rich, you got the audio. You go ahead and
Okay.
explain everything you're doing.
Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go to webinar, schedule a webinar. Okay, so this is just like creating any Zoom session, but now that you're in the webinar section, it's actually creating a webinar Zoom session.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is going to be the SCCU board meeting rehearsal. And you can add an optional description that's going to be part of the invite link that comes out if you want to. Okay. And what time did you want it for tomorrow, Maria Isabel?
It's up to your schedules, what you have available.
Okay.
Since you
Let's
guys
do
will be
it-
the ones running it.
11 a.m.
Okay. Just do it for 1 hour. And since you're the host of this duration is only suggested. You can actually keep the meeting going as long as you need to if you're the host.
Okay.
And you can actually start it anytime prior to this if you're the host as well. So Zoom webinar actually isn't strictly adherent to the times that are here, but it's just more of a, you should do it around these times type of thing.
Can I ask you a question on that one, Rich?
Yeah.
Is a unique URL going to be created for this meeting, this webinar?
Yes, there's no meeting IDs for Zoom webinar, personal meeting ID, so it always creates a unique one for every Zoom webinar. Okay, so going down, if you want to have registration, you just click this link here. If you need a password, the password can also be embedded into the webinar link. So it's actually only if people are trying to join through the meeting ID without the password.
Okay.
And without the specific link is why the password would be required. Okay, video, this is if you want the video turned on by default when they join the meeting. Typically, we just leave this off so you can leave it at the discretion of people joining. They'll still get a preview screen if you have these as on. It says, do you want to start your video when you're starting? So it will still be there, but off by default is always good. You can just control that setting when it's already in it. If you want to have enable a telephone connection to your meeting or just computer audio. And then your webinar options, Q&A is what lets people use the Q&A feature at the bottom of a Zoom session. That lets them put in questions to the panelists. Practice session allows you to meet prior to the meeting start if you are a panelist or co-host or host, and then you'll have the ability to broadcast the session when ready. Okay, so it lets you pre-start the meeting without being available to the public.
Is this what, when in the practice session, is this what allowed us to use, there was a button that's clicked on, it indicated broadcast, and until we
Correct.
clicked that broadcast button, nobody could join.
Right.
So-
Nobody from the public could join.
Okay. So kind of coming back on the last few options, we're talking about board meetings here specifically. Now, this could be different for any meeting, but for board meetings, do you always label both audio?
They have, because there's people that dial in.
Okay. And then do we always have a webinar password for board meetings?
Yeah, and when we send out the link to the board members, it's just the link with the password already embedded so that they don't have to fumble around trying to input a password.
Perfect. And
Extra layer of security so people can't just randomly guess the meeting ID and then get into the meeting. They would still get stuck with this layer of password. So it's just added security or
Okay.
against bombing.
and then on the webinar options, we don't normally turn on Q&A on the board meetings, right?
Correct. We don't turn on Q&A, and we also disable chat for Brown Act purposes. And disabling chat is actually based off of the user account itself. So we're going to go over that as well.
Okay.
You can disable chat specifically for one meeting. You have to disable it for the entire account prior to the meeting starts.
Okay.
Okay, so only authenticated users can join. This is if you have a Zoom registry account. Otherwise, it'll just let anyone in. This has never actually impeded us, so we just leave it off. Just in
I had
case.
that. I had that mixed up, Mary Isabel. That registration up top is not authenticated users. Registration must mean that someone has to register specifically for this event.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, and I was thinking about the only authenticated users can join. So we've never used registration, and the only authenticated users, that could pose an issue for board members, so we don't want to introduce that.
Exactly. So they might not register an account prior to getting their link. So we just want to be able to make sure that they can connect no matter what. And then the last one's record the webinar automatically. We actually work with Lindsay, so he's putting stuff in through Swagit, and we don't actually record in the Zoom platform for the board meetings.
Okay.
Okay.
And then let's
So
throw some alternate hosts in here.
Okay, so these are the people who are able to start the meeting if the person who creates it is not present, and that's going to be me. So, so you're going to be one of the people attending this, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to do. And Maria Isabel.
Probably Christina instead of me.
We'll do all of them. It doesn't
Okay.
hurt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have no limit on the number of co-hosts,
Okay.
as long as you have a licensed Zoom account. So we'll try it, and you might not, so that's why it will.
Right.
Okay. So
Could you
wouldn't be
do-
able to- Go ahead.
Could you do communications at a CCOE? Because
Oh,
that
sure.
one does.
Do you have a registration out there?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
And I think
Perfect.
that's where Christina logs in.
Beautiful.
Okay, so now you have this meeting. It's been created. You're able to actually start it immediately, even though it's scheduled for tomorrow. Here you can actually see the mass password, create links to either your Google Calendar, Outlook, or Yahoo Calendar,
Okay.
and it will tell you all your webinar options that you selected here.
Let's go ahead and create a link to Outlook Calendar. And actually, I don't know how this works. Do you know how this link works?
Yeah, it gives you an ICS file, which is what you open, and Outlook will identify it to create an Outlook Calendar item. So here, let me save it to my desktop, and then I'm going to go find that file and open it.
You just double click on it and it opens it up.
Yeah,
in,
just open it, and then this pops up. It just popped up on my second screen, and it says, "Do I want to create this meeting?" I can just hit save and close, and now it's going to be on.
Maria Isabel, can we ask for a favor?
Yes.
Could Rich send that to you, and then you can make that. He'll send you that file, and you can send it out to everybody who needs to be invited.
Sure. That would be
Perfect.
great.
Okay, so panelists are after you create the invitation. These are the people who can join the meeting and share screen, and they don't join as attendee automatically. So you can add as many panelists as you need here. If you need to resend anyone's invite link because they say they lost their email, you can just click resend on the side here. Okay. And then these are the invitation links for attendees. If you're going to have email settings, polls, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So the last thing is your chat feature. Okay. So to get to your chat, you have to go to your settings for your account on the left-hand side. Okay. So you're in meeting basic. This is the chat that's enabled. So we have it disabled for board meetings. So here you just want to turn it off. And it's going to say it's going to turn off all these other things that are dependent on chat, which is a private chat and auto-saving. Okay, so now chat is going to be disabled for the board meeting. There's no save or anything here. Once you click anything on these icons, it just automatically applies. And that's it for disabling chat.
All right. So Maria Isabel, this is
Okay.
my presumption. And for me, I feel like I'm comfortable with it. I have never set up a webinar meeting before. That's the first time I've ever seen Rich do it. Rich was telling me it was super complicated, that I wouldn't be able to get it because I'm a director and I don't have no clue what I'm doing anyways. I think he was wrong. I think that was relatively easy. What was your thoughts? Do you think that was?
I think it's relatively easy. It's similar to just a meeting with different functions for a webinar.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I think
I'm
it's
glad for that one.
straightforward.
Good, because yeah, it seems straightforward to me too.